I said noted to my mother-in-law, smiled, and then walked straight to the bathroom and sat on the cold tile floor for 10 minutes before I trusted myself to go back out there. That was 8 months ago. I'm only now able to talk about it without my hands shaking. My name isn't important. What matters is that I'm 31. I work as a hospital billing coordinator in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I spent 3 years being the quiet one, the one who paid, the one who helped, the one who never made things awkward at family dinners. I was good at it. I had practice. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he still is, legally while we figure things out. His family is big. Loud. The kind of big loud family that looks like a blessing from the outside. Sunday dinners that run until 10 at night. Group texts that never stop. His mother's the center of everything. Always coordinating, always organizing, always the one who just wants everyone together. I used to love that about them. I genuinely did. We got married 4 years ago. Small ceremony, just close family and a few friends, because that's what we both said we wanted. We honeymooned and I merged my life into his. His apartment first, then the house we bought together. I kept my own checking account, I'm not stupid. But I added him as an authorized user on my credit card. Because he travels for work and sometimes needs it for car rentals and hotel incidentals. That card had a $22,000 limit. I'd built it carefully over 6 years. Never missed a payment, never carried a balance past 30 days. It was the best card I had. No foreign transaction fees, good travel points, strong fraud protection. I was proud of it in the quiet way you're proud of something boring that took real discipline to build. My mother-in-law knew about the card. She'd heard me mention it once when we were talking about a trip my husband and I were planning. She said something like, "Oh, that sounds like a wonderful card and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't file it away as information she might use later. I should have." The call came on a Tuesday in March. My mother-in-law, I'll call her what my husband calls her, Mom, because that's who she presents herself as to the entire world, called to say they were having a small family get-together at her house the following Saturday. Nothing fancy, she said. Maybe 15-20 people, potluck style. I just want to get everyone in the same room before the weather gets too hot. I said great. I asked if I should bring anything. She said just yourselves. My husband was into that week for work, so we drove down together Saturday morning. I remember the drive being nice, actually. We stopped at a gas station and he got us coffees and we talked about maybe taking a trip to Portugal in the fall. Everything felt normal. Everything felt like us. We pulled up to his parents' house at 11:30. There were cars parked up and down both sides of the street for 2 blocks. I looked at my husband, he looked at me, he said, "That's a lot of cars," and I could tell from his voice that he was just as surprised as I was, which meant he hadn't known either, which would matter later. We walked in. There were 63 people in that house. I know the exact number because I counted them later, in the photos. At the time, it felt like more. The living room furniture had been pushed back against the walls. There were folding tables set up through the living room and into the dining room and even in the hallway. White tablecloths, flower centerpieces, and across the back wall in gold foil letters that had to be at least a foot tall. Congratulations, Tommy and Vicky, 40 years. My in-laws' anniversary, 40 years. I stood there in the doorway with a bottle of Pinot Grigio I'd grabbed as an afterthought, and I watched my mother-in-law cross the room toward me with her arms open and her face absolutely lit up, and I heard myself say, "Wow, this is amazing." Because what else do you say? She hugged me and said, "Can you believe it? 40 years. We had to celebrate properly." And then she moved on to hug the next person and I stood there holding my bottle of wine and trying to locate the feeling that was rising in my chest. It wasn't quite anger yet. It was more like wrongness. Like a note played just slightly off key. Something here is not right and I don't know what yet. My husband appeared at my elbow. He said quietly, "Did you know about this?" I shook my head. We got plates of food we didn't taste and found seats at one of the folding tables and smiled at aunts and cousins and neighbors, whose names I could never keep straight, and I watched the party happen around me and kept thinking, who planned this? Who paid for this? Those flower arrangements weren't cheap. The catered food wasn't cheap. Someone rented those folding tables and chairs. Someone bought 40 yards of gold foil letters. After lunch, when people were milling around and the speeches hadn't started yet, I slipped away and stood on the back porch and opened my banking app. I don't check my credit card deeply until Sunday mornings, with coffee. It had been days since I'd looked. There were 6 days since I'd looked. There were 11 transactions I did in reggies ago. A party supply rent from a company in town, 849 days stars. Then a florist, 40,000 fund, 40. A catering deposit, $2,000. A catering balance due and hundreds. A specialty bakery, 380s. A tintations and printing, $310 tend. A restaurant deposit. I assumed a rehearsal dinner-style pre-party I hadn't been told about, $600. Linen rental, 430 T. From a local event venue I recognized, awan $1 and on Thursday a photography package. I stood on that porch and did the math 3 times because I didn't trust myself the first two. $11,227 on my credit card for a party I didn't know about. For a moment I genuinely thought there had been fraud. Like, I thought my card had been skimmed somewhere, and some criminal with very specific taste had decided to throw an elaborate anniversary party with my money. That's how far my brain went before I made myself accept the obvious answer. My mother-in-law had access to my card and the card. Somewhere along the way, someone had used my card, not my husband's, not his parents', to fund this entire event. I went back inside. I found my husband and I said quietly, "Can you come outside for a second?" And I showed him my phone. His face did something I'd never seen it do before. All the expression just dropped off it. He looked at the screen, and then he looked at me, and he said, "Not a question." Yes. I didn't. I know you didn't. That's not what I'm asking right now. We stood there for a minute. I was remarkably calm. I remember being aware of my own calmness the way you're sometimes aware of being cold, observing it from a slight distance. I told him I was going to go back inside, I was going to be polite for the rest of the party, and then tonight, after we got home, we were going to figure out what happened and what to do about it. He said, "Okay." He looked like someone had hit him. The speeches started about an hour later. My father-in-law stood up and talked about meeting my mother-in-law at a church social when he was 22 and she was 19, and how he knew right away. And 40 years later, here they all were. He cried a little. People applauded. Someone brought out a cake that had a miniature version of their first house on top, and it was objectively beautiful, and I thought about the $380 charge from the bakery and felt something cold settle into my numb stomach. My mother-in-law gave a speech too. She thanked everyone for coming. She said that family was the most important thing in the world, that 40 years of building something together meant nothing if you didn't have people to share it with. She looked around the room with tears in her eyes and said, "This family has given us everything, and we hope we've given back just as much." I smiled when she looked at me. I held the smile steady. On the drive home, my husband called her. I sat in the passenger seat and stared out the window and listened to one side of the conversation. He was very calm too, which surprised me a little and also made me love him more. He said, "Mom, I need to ask you something directly. Did you use Aubrey's credit card to pay for the party today?" I heard her voice change registers even from the passenger seat. The warmth clicked off like a switch. She said, "He had it on speaker, low volume, and I could just make out the words, 'We're family.'" I didn't think she would mind. "It's a joint account." My husband said, "It's not a joint account, it's her card. I'm an authorized user, which means I'm allowed to use it." "That does not mean anyone else is," she said. "Well, we needed to celebrate properly. 40 years is a milestone. Your father and I have given so much to this family," he said. "I'm not questioning the milestone, Mom. I'm asking how you got the card number and why you didn't ask us first." She said she'd found the number in some paperwork. She'd helped us with some mail once, a year ago, when we were on vacation and needed someone to check our P.O. box, and she'd kept it just in case. Just in case of what, she didn't say. She said she'd assumed we'd be happy to contribute to something so meaningful. She said she'd planned to tell us. She said it was supposed to be a surprise and now I'd made it awkward. My husband didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, "I'll talk to you later," and he hung up. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. Not hostile silence, more like both of us needed to be somewhere quiet while we processed. When we got inside, he sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands and said, "I'm sorry." I sat next to him and said, "This isn't yours to apologize for." He said, "My family, my responsibility." I said, "Okay, but I mean it. This isn't about us." Then I got up and went to my desk and I spent the next 2 hours doing what I know how to do, which is navigating financial paperwork. I called my credit card company. I explained the situation, that my card number had been obtained without authorization and used for over $11,000 in charges without my consent. I was on hold twice. I spoke to 2 different representatives and then a supervisor's. I used the phrase unauthorized use carefully and correctly. I did not say my mother-in-law had stolen from me, even though that was what had happened. I said I did not authorize these transactions, that I did not have knowledge of them before they occurred, and that I was disputing all 11. The supervisor noted that my husband was an authorized user. I explained that being an authorized user does not give someone the right to share the card number with third parties, and that every single vendor charge had been initiated by someone other than myself or my husband. I had the call records to prove that. None of those vendors had my name anywhere on the bookings because she'd booked everything in her own name, using my card number as the payment method. That last part actually worked in my favor. She hadn't even tried to hide it. Every invoice had her name on it. The supervisor opened a dispute case for all 11 transactions. She told me it would take 10 to 15 business days to investigate, but that the charges would be provisionally credited back to my account within 72 hours while the investigation was pending. She also flagged the card for a security replacement. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a minute. Then I went into my husband's profile on the card account and removed him as an authorized user. Not because I didn't trust him. I want to be clear about that. My husband had nothing to do with what his mother did, and he'd handled it as well as I could have asked. I removed him because his information existed in the same place his mother had found my card number, and until I understood exactly how she'd accessed it, I wasn't taking chances. I told him what I'd done and why. He said that's fair. He meant it. The next 3 days were strange. My mother-in-law called twice, texted 4 times. My I think was as blindsided by this as my husband. Texted me once, a very short message that just said, "I hope you know I didn't know she was doing this. I am sorry." I believed him. My mother-in-law's messages were not apologies. The first 2 were versions of, "I can't believe you're making this into something." The next 2 moved into explaining why the party had been necessary, listing everything she and my father-in-law had done for the 40 years as though this were an invoice. The last said, "I just wanted one day to feel celebrated." I read them all. I didn't respond to any of them. My husband handled his end. The dispute was resolved in 18 days, not 10 to 15. All 11 charges were reversed. The credit card company determined that since none of the vendors had any record of me personally authorizing the charges, and since the transactions were booked in another person's name using my card number, the charges constituted unauthorized use. I got back $11,227. I also got a letter from my credit card company noting that in cases of unauthorized access, they recommend reviewing how your card information is stored and shared. Even with trusted individuals, it was boilerplate language, the kind of thing they send everyone, but I read it twice and I thought about the P.O. box, the vacation, the mail she'd helped with. I had never given her my card number. She had found it in an envelope, or on a statement, or on something I hadn't thought to protect, because I had trusted her. That's the part that took the longest to sit with. When you grow up, you're taught to be careful with strangers. Don't give your card to people you don't know. Watch your bank statements. Be vigilant. Nobody really tells you what to do when the person who accessed your account is someone you've eaten Sunday dinner with for 4 years. Someone who called you sweetheart and asked about your mother and remembered your birthday. The financial violation was fixable. $11,000 gone and then returned over the course of 3 weeks. The other thing is slower. I think about who I was the morning of that party. Excited about Portugal, drinking gas station coffee, talking about the fall. I didn't know yet what I was going to find on that porch. I didn't know that the version of my family life I'd been living inside was about to crack open a little. I don't mean my marriage. My husband and I are okay, we are genuinely okay, and the way he handled all of this made me trust him more, not less. I mean the larger thing. The idea that being welcomed into someone's family means being safe with them. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. Authorized user status is not a blank check. If you add someone to your credit card as an authorized user, they are allowed to use that card personally. They are not allowed to share your card number with anyone else, not their mother, not their sister, not a vendor they're booking in their own name. That is unauthorized use, and credit card companies take it seriously, and you have the right to dispute every single charge. I also know that you should review who has access to your financial documents regularly, not because the people in your life are necessarily bad, but because things can be found that you didn't intend to share. Statements, account numbers, routing numbers. They can live on paper in a way that's easy to forget about until someone remembers them for you. My mother-in-law and I don't talk the way we used to. We've been in the same room twice since March, both times at my husband's urging, both times polite in the way that requires effort and leaves you tired afterward. My father-in-law and I still text occasionally. He sent me a photo of his garden last month, and I told him it looked beautiful, and it did. I don't know what Sunday dinners look like going forward. I don't know if they look like anything. My husband is grieving something, the version of his family he thought he had maybe, and I'm trying to give him space to do that while also not disappearing inside someone else's family drama as though my name wasn't on that credit card. What I do know is this: I went back for my own money and I got it. Not because I was angry, though I was. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, though what she did had consequences. But because $11,000 is $11,000 and I had earned every cent of it, and it was mine. The party was beautiful, honestly. The flowers were gorgeous. The cake was perfect. 40 years is something worth celebrating. I just should have been asked first.